Gur Margaret Alaska here, like agus Curm Fócha Rivanara freshen. Minister, this week I met with representatives of IATA, the Irish Association of Travel Agents, who are very much involved in selling, I suppose, aviation products to the Irish market, not just in terms of holidays and leisure travellers, but also in terms of the business market and the essential travellers we've talked about earlier. What surprised me in the course of that discussion is obviously they have had an incredibly difficult period over the last year, and that is understood by everybody. But what we now look at in 2021 in a post-Brexit scenario is the fact that the IATA members, the Irish travel agents based in Ireland employing Irish people and regulated by Irish and European law, are competing with British travel agents who are members of ABTA, which is a corresponding organisation in the United Kingdom. No difficulty with that. The difficulty arises insofar as many ABTA travel agents, British travel agents working here in Ireland, are trading under .eu domain names. And so even though they are regulated by British law and they are no longer subject to important European consumer legislation like the Package Holidays Directive, they're trading here under essentially an Irish moniker. And it's not clear to me, and I don't think it's clear to many consumers, that those travel agents are not as well bonded as the IATA travel agents, and they are not regulated by European directives. And I think that as we return, hopefully, sometime maybe late this year, to more normalised aviation and more normalised travel conditions, that we have to look at possibly mounting a campaign, a public information campaign, to ensure that Irish consumers know when they're booking with a travel agent, whether that is an Irish travel agent who is bonded by IATA, which has extremely high protection for consumers, who are also subject to European legislation in terms of the Package Holidays Directive, which again provides a fine layer of protection for consumers in this jurisdiction. Are they dealing with that kind of a travel agent, or are they dealing with a travel agent outside the European Union, albeit with a .ie address online, or albeit with an office in Dublin? Who's regulating them? And we need to mount a public information campaign to ensure that consumers know what they're getting when they buy a package. Obviously, that is a bit away, but I want to be associated with the comments of my colleagues, particularly in terms of the airline industry as a whole and the difficulties that it's faced. In the time that I have left, I wonder if I might also raise an issue with you in terms of the rest of your portfolio, and driving licences have been mentioned. I've been contacted by a young man in Goatstown who has not yet sat his driving test and can't do so, obviously. But more importantly, he hasn't finished the driving lessons that he's required to do before he's entitled to sit his driving test. His father works, his mother is unable to drive because of a disability, but he himself is an essential worker. And he has to therefore get the bus to work. And he tells me he's very uncomfortable currently getting the bus in the current circumstances. And I'm wondering if there's anything we can do for people like him, people in his situation, either by, I mean, if we can use taxis, for example, which we can at the moment, and I know taxi drivers have put in place screens and protections and all the rest. If that can be done, can it not also be done for driving instructors? Or in the absence of that being possible, presumably there are people in his household, potentially, who could teach him to drive. Can we forego the requirement for new drivers to go through the lessons? I mean, if they're passing the driving test at the end of the day, they must have achieved a certain level of skill. And I've always been supportive of the regime that required the certain number of driving lessons. I think that is a good idea, and it is progress within our system. But just in the current environment where you have an essential worker who is uncomfortable taking public transport and who doesn't have other options, who's ready to sit his test, can we do something to facilitate him and other people who are in the same situation? Margaret.